Reliance Industries Ltd. Campus Interview Preparation. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most important preparation guides for Reliance Industries Ltd. campus and off-campus interviews. Brief intro. Reliance Industries Ltd. is one of India's largest conglomerates, operating across petrochemicals, refining, retail, telecom, and digital services. Its India operations focus on world-scale energy and materials production, nationwide retail expansion, and the rapidly growing Jio digital ecosystem, powering connectivity and technology adoption. These questions are gathered using web search and our internal database. So use this as a preparation material, but also explore other topics from our channel playlist. Timestamps are in the description if you want to jump to a specific question. Let's begin. How would you assess the financial performance of a diversified conglomerate like Reliance Industries Ltd? Sample answer. I evaluate each business separately: O2C, retail, Jio, and new energy. I review segment margins, capital intensity, cash generation, and return on capital employed. Then I analyze debt distribution, profitability trends, and contribution to consolidated results. A conglomerate like Reliance requires understanding core drivers of every vertical, not just consolidated numbers. While answering the above question, one should always include points like segment analysis, cash flow review, and capital allocation judgment. What major risks would you consider when auditing a large petrochemical and refining business? Sample answer. I consider crude price volatility, yield deviations, shutdown risks, safety compliance, and inventory valuation challenges. There's also significant FX exposure, complex hedging, and environmental compliance risk. Operational disruptions directly impact refining margins. While answering the above question, one should always include points like crude volatility, operational risk, and valuation risk. How do you evaluate internal controls across O2C, retail, and Jio? Sample answer. I map controls for each vertical. O2C requires strong production, inventory, and safety controls. Retail focuses on billing, shrinkage, and cash handling. Jio emphasizes IT controls, customer data accuracy, and billing integrity. I assess control maturity and whether policies stay consistent across thousands of touchpoints. While answering the above question, one should always include points like segment-specific controls, consistency, and IT-driven controls. What procedures would you perform to audit crude oil procurement and refining operations? Sample answer. I verify crude purchase contracts, test landed cost calculations, and match tanker receipts with quantity and quality reports. In refining, I analyze yield patterns, energy consumption, and loss percentages. I reconcile input crude with output products to detect abnormalities. While answering the above question, one should always include points like contract validation, landed cost checks, and yield analysis. How would you investigate discrepancies between refinery production reports and SAP inventory records? Sample answer. I compare daily production logs, tank farm readings, and movement records. I check system upload timings and investigate manual adjustments. If discrepancies persist, I test calibration of flow meters and gauges. A mismatch may reveal system issues or operational losses. While answering the above question, one should always include points like reconciliations, calibration checks, and timing differences. What checks do you perform to validate the valuation of crude, intermediates, and finished products? Sample answer. I test valuation formulas, index-linked pricing, and conversion costs. I verify weighted average costing and ensure that NRV testing is performed in volatile periods. I also reconcile physical quantities with valuation reports. While answering the above question, one should always include points like pricing validation, NRV checks, and reconciliation. How do you evaluate impairment indicators for large refinery, telecom, or retail assets? Sample answer. I review utilization levels, cash flow performance, regulatory changes, technology shifts, and market demand. Assets like telecom fiber or refinery units must match long-term assumptions. If indicators exist, I check recoverable value using discounted cash flow models. While answering the above question, one should always include points like utilization analysis, indicators, external indicators, and DCF review. What steps would you take to audit the capitalization of project costs in long-gestation capex? Sample answer. I verify eligibility of costs, test vendor invoices, and match expenses with project progress. I check whether interest during construction and overhead allocations are computed correctly. Costs unrelated to future economic benefits must be expensed. While answering the above question, one should always include points like matching costs with project stage, eligibility checks, and allocation accuracy. How would you examine vendor payments and contractor bills for major expansion projects? Sample answer. I validate measurement sheets, site engineer certifications, contract terms, and rate applicability. I match build quantities with physical progress and material consumption. Large projects have high fraud and overbilling risk, so evidence must be detailed. While answering the above question, one should always include points like checking measurement records, contract alignment, and physical validation. Stop. What controls would you expect in place for large-scale procurement in petrochemical operations? Sample answer. I expect strong vendor approval processes, tendering, maker-checker approvals, GRN checks, and automated three-way matching. Petrochemical procurement also requires technical specifications and quality testing at receipt. While answering the above question, one should always include points like vendor controls, three-way matching, and technical testing. How do you assess risk management practices regarding commodity price volatility and forex exposure? Sample answer. I check hedging policies, risk limits, derivative documentation, and hedge effectiveness testing. I evaluate exposures from crude imports, polymer sales, and USD borrowings. Risk management must balance profitability with volatility protection. While answering the above question, one should always include points like hedge policy review, exposure mapping, and effectiveness checks. What procedures do you follow to audit trading operations related to crude, polymers, and fuels? Sample answer. I validate trade confirmations, pricing mechanisms, logbooks, and settlement records. I test mark-to-market valuations and confirm positions with counterparties. Trading operations require strong segregation between front office, mid-office, and back office. While answering the above question, one should always include points like contract confirmations, NTM checks, and segregation review. End. How would you investigate mismatches between physical and book inventory in large warehouses or retail distribution centers? Sample answer. I attend physical counts, analyze shrinkage patterns, and check scanning or RFID data. I test reconciliation between WMS and SAP. Mismatches may arise from pilferage, misscanning, or timing issues. While answering the above question, one should always include points like physical verification, WNS SAP reconciliation, and shrinkage analysis. How do you audit power and energy consumption in refinery and chemical plants? Sample answer. I reconcile meter readings, match consumption with throughput, and test abnormal spikes. I check tariff application and cross-verify with production patterns. Energy intensity is a key KPI. Deviations often reveal inefficiencies. While answering the above question, one should always include points like energy meter analysis, production matching, and KPI review. What checks do you perform to validate the financial reporting of Jio's telecom operations? Sample answer. I review subscriber metrics, ARPU trends, churn rates, and network cost allocations. I reconcile subscriber data with billing and revenue systems. Telecom reporting must reflect accurate subscriber counts and usage data. While answering the above question, one should always include points like subscriber data checks, ARPU validation, and system reconciliation. How would you audit revenue recognition for telecom services and digital subscriptions? Sample answer. I identify performance obligations, check prepaid and postpaid billing cycles, and verify usage-based revenue. I test deferred revenue balances and validate activation logs. Digital subscriptions require verifying service delivery logs. While answering the above question, one should always include points like identifying obligations, testing billing cycles, and checking deferred revenue. And what controls do you review for billing accuracy and customer data integrity in Jio? Sample answer. I validate system-generated billing, customer master data controls, change management logs, and automated rating engines. I check whether discounts, cashback, and plan changes are correctly applied. Billing errors directly impact revenue leakage. While answering the above question, one should always include points like master data accuracy, rating engine checks, and change control. How do you approach auditing a large retail network with thousands of stores? Sample answer. I use a risk-based sampling approach, test POS controls, analyze shrinkage, and review store-level cash handling. I also check pricing, promotions, and stock movement accuracy. Retail audits require tight coordination across geographies. While answering the above question, one should always include points like POS controls, shrinkage checks, and cash handling review. What procedures do you follow to validate shrinkage, pilferage, or wastage in retail operations? Sample answer. I test cycle counts, compare physical stock with WMS data, and analyze shrinkage ratios over time. I review CCTV footage for high-loss stores. Unusual shrinkage may signal fraud or control failure. While answering the above question, one should always include points like cycle counts, shrinkage trend analysis, and CCTV checks. How do you examine vendor tie-ups, pricing, and discount structures in retail procurement? Sample answer. I verify contracts, compare negotiated rates with actual invoices, and test discount pass-through. I also review rebate arrangements and performance-linked incentives. Retail pricing must stay consistent with approved vendor agreements. While answering the above question, one should always include points like rate validation, discount review, and contract compliance. What steps would you take to audit logistics and supply chain costs in a large retail business? Sample answer. I test freight invoices, warehouse charges, and transporter contracts. I validate route optimization, detention charges, and reverse logistics. Logistics costs directly impact retail margins, so accuracy matters. While answering the above question, one should always include points like freight checks, route validation, and transporter contract review. How do you evaluate the effectiveness of internal audit across multiple verticals in Reliance? Sample answer. I examine audit coverage, frequency, issue closure rates, and escalation mechanisms. I review whether IA has specialized teams for O2C, Jio, and retail. Effective internal audit must align with enterprise risk. While answering the above question, one should always include points like coverage adequacy, issue closure, and competency of IA teams. What considerations arise when auditing consolidation of subsidiaries, JVs, and associates? Sample answer. I check uniform policies, accuracy of eliminations, minority interest calculation, and valuation of investments. I also ensure component auditors provide reliable reports. Complex JV structures require careful disclosure testing. While answering the above question, one should always include points like policy alignment, elimination accuracy, and component auditor reliance. How do you audit intercompany transactions between Jio, Retail, and O2C segments? Sample answer. I match reciprocal balances, validate pricing logic, check intercompany agreements, and review allocation keys. Intercompany revenue must not inflate consolidated results, so elimination accuracy matters. While answering, please include points like reciprocal matching, pricing checks, and agreement review. What checks would you perform to ensure proper elimination entries during consolidation? Sample answer. I test intercompany sales, purchases, loans, and asset transfers. I verify timing alignment and FX translation accuracy. I also validate elimination worksheets and compare them with trial balances. While answering, include points like elimination testing, timing checks, and worksheet validation. How do you evaluate cash flow generation and capital allocation decisions across business units? Sample answer. I compare operating cash flow from each unit with its capex plans and returns generated. Capital-heavy units like O2C must justify investment through incremental margins, while digital and retail must show scalability. I analyze free cash flow trends to see whether capital allocation aligns with long-term strategy. While answering the above question, one should always include points like FCF review, capex justification, and segment-level analysis. What procedures do you follow to audit ESG-related disclosures for sustainability and environment? Sample answer. I validate emission numbers, energy use, waste management data, and compliance records. I test whether ESG metrics are backed by operational logs, audits, and environmental reports. I also ensure disclosures align with global frameworks like GRI or BRSR. While answering, always include points like data validation, regulatory alignment, and framework compliance. How would you examine refinery margin calculations and GRM, gross refining margin reports? Sample answer. I check crude cost inputs, product price realizations, yield patterns, and energy costs. I verify that GRM formulas match industry practice. Any abnormal deviation in yields or loss percentages requires detailed investigation. While answering, include points like crude cost review, yield checks, and GRM formula validation. End. What audit risks arise in petrochemical production processes such as polymer or polyester manufacturing? Sample answer. Risks include inaccurate yield reporting, byproduct valuation issues, unrecorded losses, and quality deviations. Process-integrated plants also carry risks around energy consumption, catalyst usage, and costing errors. While answering, include points like yield integrity, energy checks, and costing accuracy. How do you assess operational efficiency through KPIs like yield, throughput, energy intensity, and capacity utilization? Sample answer. I compare actual KPIs with standards, budgets, and global benchmarks. I analyze whether bottlenecks or shutdowns impacted performance. Consistent deviation from benchmarks may indicate operational inefficiency or asset fatigue. While answering, include points like benchmarking, variance analysis, and root cause review. What procedures would you use to validate digital platform data for businesses like JioMart or Agio? Sample answer. I test order logs, payment gateway data, delivery confirmations, and refund records. I reconcile platform data with SAP postings. Digital platforms require end-to-end testing of order-to-cash accuracy. While answering, include points like system reconciliation, order log validation, and payment checks. How would you audit customer refunds, cashback, and discount programs in digital commerce? Sample answer. I verify eligibility logic, system-generated rules, supporting approvals, and settlement records. Cashback accruals and liabilities must match transaction logs. Any manual adjustments require deeper scrutiny. While answering, include points like eligibility testing, liability validation, and manual override review. What checks do you perform to validate Jio's large tower, fiber, and telecom infrastructure assets? Sample answer: I review asset registers, physical verification, route maps, and commissioning reports. I test capitalization criteria and ensure asset locations match records. Fiber length, tower count, and network capacity must reconcile with technical logs. While answering, include points like asset verification, commissioning checks, and technical reconciliation. How do you investigate cost overruns in complex engineering or telecom network projects? Sample answer: I compare budgets with actuals, analyze reasons such as design changes or delays, and check contractor claims. I also see whether overruns were approved through proper governance. Any unapproved cost escalation is flagged. While answering, include points like budget comparison, cause analysis, and approval tracking. What risks arise in auditing renewable energy and green hydrogen initiatives under Reliance New Energy? Sample answer: risks include technology uncertainty, regulatory dependency, long-gestation capex, and volatile pricing of solar and battery components. Revenue models may be untested, so impairment risk is high. Data around production and efficiency must be reliable. While answering, include points like technology risk, regulatory exposure, and impairment sensitivity. How would you validate production and sale data for solar panels, batteries, or chemicals? Sample answer: I verify batch records, production logs, and quality reports. I reconcile dispatch records with SAP sales entries. I also check whether yields align with expected efficiency standards. While answering, include points like production log checks, dispatch reconciliation, and efficiency validation. What controls should be reviewed for data integrity in a tech-enabled ecosystem like Jio Platforms? Sample answer: I test access controls, change management processes, encryption standards, and automated validation checks. I also assess segregation of duties and the robustness of API integrations. Any weak ITGC can cause large-scale financial errors. While answering, include points like access control, change logs, and integration checks. How do you test IT general controls across telecom, O2C, and retail businesses? Sample answer: I evaluate user access governance, password policies, system development controls, and backup procedures. I test whether changes to systems follow documented workflows. ITGCs ensure reliability of all downstream financial data. While answering, include points like access testing, change management, and backup validation. What steps do you take to evaluate cybersecurity and data protection controls? Sample answer: I check incident logs, vulnerability assessments, penetration test reports, and data loss prevention tools. I assess whether customer and employee data is encrypted and whether response plans are tested regularly. While answering, include points like incident review, encryption, and monitoring tools. End of. How would you audit hedging policies for crude oil, forex, and interest rate exposures? Sample answer: I verify hedge documentation, matching of exposures, hedge effectiveness testing, and accounting entries. I ensure derivative valuation aligns with market data. Any speculative activity must be challenged. While answering, include points like hedge documentation, exposure mapping, and valuation testing. What procedures do you follow to review compliance with SEBI, Companies Act, and listing obligations? Sample answer: I verify required disclosures, board approvals, related party compliance, and adherence to corporate governance norms. I check whether quarterly and annual filings comply with all regulatory formats. While answering, include points like disclosure review, governance checks, and regulatory alignment. How do you assess the adequacy of provisions for environmental, legal, or compliance liabilities? Sample answer. I review legal team assessments, environmental audit reports, probability analysis, and historical settlement patterns. I validate assumptions used in estimating provisions and check for adequate disclosures. While answering, include points like legal review, probability assessment, and disclosure testing. How would you evaluate financial feasibility of new business ventures, like 5G, green hydrogen, or mobility solutions? Sample answer. I assess capital requirements, expected return profiles, market demand, regulatory risks, and payback periods. I also test sensitivity of assumptions like pricing, utilization, and competition. New ventures require robust scenario analysis. While answering, include points like capital need assessment, return evaluation, and scenario testing. What procedures do you follow to audit employee cost allocation across various functions and subsidiaries? Sample answer. I verify timesheets, payroll records, allocation keys, and HR system data. I ensure allocations reflect actual work performed. Any manual overrides or unusual adjustments require deeper review. While answering, include points like timesheet validation, allocation accuracy, and override analysis. How do you review treasury operations, surplus cash deployment, and investment portfolios? Sample answer. I validate investment policies, confirm balances with custodians, check returns against benchmarks, and test compliance with limits. I also review liquidity forecasts. Treasury decisions must align with risk appetite. While answering, include points like investment policy testing, confirmation, and benchmark comparison. OI. What checks do you perform for accurate revenue recognition in wholesale and retail fuel sales? Sample answer. I match dispatch data, fuel station sales logs, and SAP entries. I check pricing updates, discount schemes, and dealer commission accounting. Wholesale contracts must match delivery and invoicing accurately. While answering, include points like dispatch reconciliation, pricing validation, and commission checks. How would you audit tie-ups, franchise models, and partner arrangements under Reliance Retail? Sample answer. I validate franchise agreements, revenue sharing terms, royalty calculations, and security deposits. I also test compliance with store brand standards and operational KPIs. Partner models require strong control linkage. While answering, include points like agreement review, royalty testing, and compliance checks. What controls must be tested for warehouse management and distribution network operations? Sample answer. I test inventory movement controls, RFID or scanning accuracy, bin-to-bin transfers, and shipment validation. I also review dispatch accuracy and reverse logistics controls. Warehousing errors directly affect margins. While answering, include points like movement validation, scanning accuracy, and dispatch checks. How do you evaluate risks associated with diversification into technology, entertainment, and digital businesses? Sample answer. I assess technology obsolescence, data privacy risks, customer churn, content licensing risks, and capital intensity. New digital ventures may have volatile revenue models, so I analyze unit economics closely. While answering, include points like tech risk, churn analysis, and revenue model scalability. How would you prepare an audit plan covering O2C, Jio, Retail, and new energy under tight timelines? Sample answer. I prioritize high-risk areas, coordinate with component teams, define sampling scope, and integrate digital audit tools. I plan parallel site work and ensure early communication with management to avoid bottlenecks. Tight timelines require structured planning and clear escalation pathways. While answering, include points like risk-based planning, coordination, and timeline management. Thank you for watching, and if you liked our video, kindly press the like button and leave us a comment. This will help us reach a wider audience. Don't forget to check the playlist for more great learning.